the impression that perhaps between Africans in the diaspora, in this case, we are looking at the Africans in the Caribbean and Africans in Africa, there is somebody that is doing the middleman, who is transferring the information, who is trying to sort of tell you this is what the African says, and this person goes to African and tell you this is what the African diaspora says. Is it possible that we can be giving somebody to do this privilege, giving this privilege to somebody to do the work for us, whereas we can actually be connecting directly to ourselves? If we want to learn anything, we can actually go there to learn it. For example, I've done a lot of interview with university professors in US, and I continue to do. I still have a lot to do because our history is an ocean that we need to explore. So when we say we want to learn about Africa, I don't think it is too complicated because Africa is not a theory. Africa is not something you need to read. It's something you actually can experience. You can see it, no? If you say maybe your ancestors were taken away from Africa, Africa is not in the moon. Africa is in this planet. You can actually go there and find out for yourself. The, the language they spoke then is the same language they speak today. Irrespective, okay, we can take away the colonial languages. We speak English, Portuguese, and the rest, but there are still the languages that were spoken then, like the Yoruba, the Hausa, the Igbo, the Ashanti. There are many of them. They are still there today. The people are still there. I am thinking that, of course, this is not only to the African diaspora, but even African government at home still need to care about their people in the diaspora. In that, I am thinking that somebody is just doing the joke like this, just playing us like this, and telling, no, this is, yeah, this is what you should take. Now, this is what is real. That is it. Do we have the possibility of able to connect among ourselves, African and African diaspora? That is.
I would say it is being done. Perhaps it's not being done on a huge scale that would get the attention of the media, because remember, a lot of what we think is, let's admit this, it's influenced by what we see in the news. And depending on the news outlet that you tune into, you're going to get a very different perspective of any country or any people. Uh, the first example that comes to mind is the image of Haiti in mainstream media. Haiti is almost always portrayed as the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. It's always portrayed in terms of the violence. And yes, these things are happening in Haiti. There is violence, there's gang violence, there are kidnappings. Yes, there's poverty. But there's a whole other side to Haiti that nobody knows because it's never been portrayed in the media. And unless you go to Haiti, and I really cite Haiti because it was the first Black republic in the hemisphere, okay? And so they are a model for us in the Caribbean, right? They've got 200 years of independence. So had I not had Haitian friends and had I not gone to Haiti myself and discovered the beautiful side of Haiti, the nature side of Haiti, had I not had the opportunity to interact with Haitians, I would really just think that Haiti was only what I saw on the television. And so the same goes for the African continent. I mean, how many people I have met who think Africa is one country? Uh, I mean, that's a really extreme case of ignorance. But the reality is that that's kind of the image that's channeled in some places. So unless you seek to inform yourself, unless you try to educate yourself, unless you ask some questions, you may not know that Africa is a whole lot of countries. And as you said, rightfully so, we can go to Africa. We can go see what Africa is, all the different facets of Africa, right? We can experience the language of our ancestors because of the same languages that are being spoken in some cases nowadays. So we have that opportunity. I personally have had that opportunity, and it's been such a privilege. I worked recently in Zimbabwe for 7 months, and although it was at the time when the pandemic broke out, I was able to visit some of the more remote villages. I had never in my life driven for so many hours because I come from a small island. You drive for 3 hours, you reach the end of the island. There's nowhere else to go. You reach in the sea. And there was I in Zimbabwe driving for hours and hours and hours. And I could not see a drop of water anywhere. There was no sea, there was no lake. So for me as a Caribbean person surrounded by water, going to a landlocked country in Africa, it was an amazing journey, an amazing discovery for me to see how people live without water. I mean, I'm probably saying this here, you're thinking, well, what is she talking about? But when you're so used to looking out your window and you can see the sea and you can drive around the coastline and you can always see the sea, and you get to a place where you drive for hours and you don't see the sea. It's impressive. So that's just one little anecdote. But I was glad that I had that opportunity to visit not just the capital city, which looks very much like a colonial town. You know, the British built quite similar architecture wherever they went. They gave similar names to streets wherever they went. There's always a Queen Street, a King Street, a Prince Street, a King George. Um, you know, in Tobago, for example, we have the capital of Tobago, Scarborough. You have names like Roxborough and Speyside. And you go to Zimbabwe and you have similar names because that's part of the British colonial tradition, the vestiges of colonial days that would have been left behind. But the place, the vegetation, the food, the colors, the scents, so different. And so yes, I agree with you. We have that opportunity to go to discover for ourselves where we came from. And as far as finances allow, we should take that opportunity. I certainly have been able to do so. I will definitely be doing so when that new line comes in through Ghana. I've never been to the West Coast, so I'm definitely going to be making it my business to go to explore the West Coast of Africa.
Thank you so much for that. It is important. It's something that we have to do, but even African government also need to do it because the Africans in diaspora are just your brothers. They are the other part of you. Without them, you are also not complete, no, in this sense. So anyway, the argument is actually deeper sometimes, and it is broader. By the way, we are going to have to move a bit. Okay. Now you have a business. Because you will spend some time here, I think it's right that you spend this few seconds to let people know how they can profit from your business. What do you do, and how can people benefit from it? Please go.
So I started a business in what I love. For many, many years, I worked in the field of communications, but I've decided to dedicate myself entirely to my first love, which is languages. And so I have a language services agency called Interpreting Your Needs. And we do exactly what we say. We interpret your language needs and we provide the solution. So we provide conference interpreting services, translation of documents, but also multilingual project management. And how can people benefit from my services? Well, you know, I have to say, thanks to COVID, and yes, COVID has caused great loss around the globe. But I have to acknowledge that thanks to COVID, the technologies have evolved so quickly. The technologies for online virtual meetings, for example, which would have been in development prior to COVID, were accelerated thanks to COVID. And so now I can work from right here on my little island with my dog barking and next to the sea. I can work from here. And I have been serving as an interpreter for meetings globally with participants tuning in from Africa. Actually, just last week I had a conference like that. The participants we're part of the power pool, the North African power pool. We were talking about renewable energy with an interpreter, another interpreter I was working. She was in Spain. I am here in the Caribbean, and the participants are on the African continent. So it's a global village. It's a global service right here from the comfort of home, and I'm able to work with people across time zones. It doesn't matter anymore. Hey, if I have to get up at 3 in the morning to serve you, I will do so. That's okay. But essentially, I am doing what I love, and I love serving people. I love helping people to bridge language barriers. I love that I get to be that bridge so that they can communicate their ideas, that they can collaborate with people across the globe to solve problems that they are facing, and that through that bridge, there can be progress. That's how I see myself. That's how I see my service. And so I'm very happy to do so. You can reach out to me or visit our website, interpretingyourneeds.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. You can look out for me, Gennike. I get a lot of questions on LinkedIn that I'm happy to answer, and just to make friendly connections. Yes, there's a lot of business on LinkedIn, but very friendly connections. People just wanting to get to know who you are, how things are like in your country. So I'm open to that as well.
What would be the final statement here, looking at what we have discussed today? Maybe a message of yours or anything you think can be the conclusion of the conversation. Please go.
My final thoughts, Ovei, I want to come right back to Nelson Mandela, pay tribute to him and for his journey that has impacted the globe. And he visited my country many years ago. But just to remind us, he said, you speak to a man in a language he understands, it goes to his head. But if you speak to a man in his language, it goes to his heart. And that is what I want to leave you and your audience with, that it's a different connection. It's a heart connection when you speak the language of the person that you're speaking with. Yes, they may be able to speak your language, but it's a different conversation when you can speak that person's language. That's the value of learning a foreign language. It really is a superpower.
Gennike Mayers, thank you so much. It really will be a very interesting and a full lecture. Thank you so much.
Grazie, Ovei. Ciao.
Grazie. Thank you.